Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest January transfer roundup. Yes, the European window slams shut this coming Monday, so we're going to look at the deals that might get done between now and then. The business has already been done, and much, much more. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, Taylor Rocco's here. Hello, Taylor. How are you?
I am splendid and wonderful, Mr. Bailey. How about yourself?
Oh, radiant, sir. Radiant. Thank you very much for asking. Graham Rutten's also here. Hello, Graham.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. How are you? Have you had any bids? Are you hoping for a late transfer in the window? Any other podcasts that have come in for you the last few days? Joe Rogan, any discussions taking place?
I can't say at this point. The come and get me please have been made, Graham. Let's just say
Sure.
that. We're waiting. My agent is on
It's
the
a bidding
line.
war.
One can dream. Joe Lowry, how are you?
I'm great. I am. I don't want you to go to Saudi Arabia, Ryan. If I'm being honest, I know the pay's better. I know they've got some cool stuff. I just don't want you to leave. I'm not ready.
Okay.
Emotionally,
Thanks. Appreciate
physically, emotionally.
My departure Instagram post will be all the more heartfelt based on your comments, Joe. Thank you very much.
Well, my work here is done. See you guys later.
Oh, just kidding. We're all sticking around, listener. And you can hear more of us at patreon.com/Total Soccer Show, by the way, which is the best way to support this endeavor. Bonus episodes, bonus videos, and access to our Discord where all the cool kids are hanging out. One more time, but slowly. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is where you'll find that. And also, we're on YouTube. You can see our lovely smiling faces looking fit as butcher's dogs we all are today. Come and join us on YouTube. Is that not a phrase you've heard, Joe? Is that a new one?
Taylor's eyes went up as mine did, so maybe is that a British thing?
I like it, though.
Explain.
I think it might be.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Why
Butcher's
are
dogs
butcher's
get to eat a lot of
dogs so
meat.
fit?
They eat a lot of protein.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
They get the scraps.
Yeah.
But wouldn't that? I mean, do they really have to go looking for it though? You know, like they just get to sit around and eat a bunch of meat.
True, they're not exercised well. They're just sitting in the butcher shop
concerned.
eating meat.
I'm concerned about the
Depends
arteries
what meat.
mostly.
Is it like lean chicken? Because there's a difference between that or like kebab meat. Like,
So
You get your kebab meat from the butcher's, Graham?
in that sense, I
No,
am
he gets
as
it from
fit
the
as a
haircut
butcher's
tackle
dog.
place, obviously.
he gets this from his barber, as Joe said.
Yeah.
I'll say this. Here's a very random anecdote.
The Graham Barber lore.
When we lived in Istanbul, there are tons and tons of street dogs because dogs, I guess, end up
Now,
getting
there's
thrown
a
out.
fit dog.
But then also people, I think, would like get them as puppies, and then once they got older, didn't want them in their apartments and whatever. But dogs aren't nearly as well taken care of as cats are over there. So we once had some like ground beef that was going like close to bad, and we fed it to the street dog that we liked outside, and that dog sprinted up and down the street for like a solid 30 minutes. So I do feel like protein leads to like excess energy for dogs. So in that way, Ryan, to go back to it, I think butcher's dogs probably eat that protein. They do some laps. They're kind of all like jacked up and ready to go. It makes sense. I like it.
There we go. Very good. My guitar teacher had a band called TV for Dogs, and the story he told was he was in Turkey, and there was a store with rotisserie chickens in the window, dogs sitting on the curb watching them. Owner comes out, TV for dogs, this. Pretty good, right?
It's very good.
Oh,
Yeah, there you go. All right. Talking about very good. Taylor is mimicking a
I was
dog.
waiting for the segue.
He's mimicking a dog looking at a chicken, listener. That was a wonderful visual, which you can see on our YouTube. Do join us there. But let's get to our transfer roundup. Why don't we start, Graham, at Old Trafford, where Marcus Rashford may or may not be. He's not on speaking terms with his coach, it seems, at this point as we record. What is the latest with Mr. Rashford?
I thought you meant his existence had been canceled for a moment. It's like he may or may not be. Like, oh wow, okay, his existence
It's
is no longer
somewhere
there.
in the time
I'm
space
with you.
continuum.
I'm with
I
you
believe.
now. Yeah.
Pretty close to that happening, to be honest, by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Ryan. The report today that Amrin and Rashford are not talking to each other. It seems like that relationship has completely broken down. And the last time we spoke about Marcus Rashford on one of these episodes, AC Milan seemed like the likeliest destination. Since then, though, Milan have signed Kyle Walker on loan, and they now don't seem to have the financial room to sign Rashford as well. And according to the Athletic's David Ornstein, Dortmund are still in the mix, but similar to AC Milan, they don't really have the financial room, so something would need to change between now and the end of the window for them to get Marcus Rashford in. And so at this point, the strongest link, and it's not particularly strong, but the strongest link nonetheless, is with Barcelona. David Ornstein says that they have the money to sign him on loan. How? I do not know. But Manchester United would cover a large portion of his wages. Of course, Barca don't actually need Marcus Rashford. I don't think he starts for them over any of their starting wide players at the moment. So he would be a depth piece, and I don't personally see why Barcelona would be that bothered about Marcus Rashford, at least not the 2025 Marcus Rashford. But that is the direction of travel with Marcus Rashford right now. There is a sense that surely he has to move on from Manchester United before the end of the window. It's just very unclear where he might end up go.
Can Barcelona actually register players right now? Is that clear at least? Like, can they? Someone
does
have to
that
leave?
matter?
I saw the same Ornstein interview where I can't tell if he was just kind of like hand waving that or if he knows more. But he basically answered your question, Ryan, with their financial position isn't actually as perilous as they make it out to be and as the media makes it out to be. There is some flexibility there. And then he moved on really quickly. So I think your question is a valid one. Do they have places? What's the financial situation like? But to Graham's point, I think the bigger question is why would they do this? I guess there is some name cachet there. Maybe there's an idea that you get him in for cheap. He's really happy with new scenery. He plays like we know he can.
Sure.
And the world is good again.
Yeah.
Maybe you want some just some options in case Lamine Yamal can't play every single game all the time constantly. Like maybe there's a rotation thing in there. It still feels to me similar to Milan that his name is just being linked with anybody who could theoretically purchase him and afford his wages or afford some of his wages or whatever it might be, and has the cachet and the profile where I think he would be willing to go.
I think all that's fair. Though, is this not the same show that when we were talking about Rashford last time, we talked about him as being a great rotation option for Dortmund and a valuable depth piece for Milan? Mm-hmm. How is this different? Like, I understand the Barcelona financial question marks are very real here, and let's be honest, none of us exactly understand what's going on because it doesn't seem like anybody's willing to say what's going on, and it probably doesn't serve Barcelona to make a lot of that stuff public. The issue here for Rashford is his contract. Manchester United want to offload as much of that salary as humanly possible, and potential destination clubs like Barcelona want to take as little of that salary as humanly possible. So this feels like a last moment, somebody's going to cave kind of situation, whether it's with Barcelona or someone else. Does not seem like Amorim wants Rashford back at all. So if I'm Manchester United, you might as well get, if it's $1, like you might as well get some number off your books by getting Marcus Rashford to go somewhere else. You put him into the chicken rotisserie window and let all the dogs look at him for half a season. That has real value. Barcelona have basically 3 wingers in their squad who are playing real minutes this year. One of those wingers is a child. I totally see room for Rashford in this squad. I don't think he dramatically changes their fate this season. They're not going to win the title. Maybe they make a run in the Champions League. That's great. But yeah, Barcelona could totally use Marcus Rashford, along with like most teams in Europe.
They could use the 2021 or 2022 Marcus Rashford, 2025 or 2024 Marcus Rashford.
Did we not talk about him as being a useful depth piece, or am I just misremembering? I might just be misremembering.
I'll speak for myself. Last time we spoke about this, I didn't really understand the AC Milan links because I thought Rafael Leao starts ahead of him, and then I brought up Jamie Gittins when we talked about Borussia Dortmund, and I think I said at the time I would play Jamie Gittins over Marcus Rashford at the moment. We've seen Marcus Rashford score 30 goals in a season before. I just don't have any faith that that player is still there.
Sure.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but it feels like he's maybe dealing with some off-the-field things. I think a move to a foreign country would be healthy for him at this point and get away from the gaze of the English media. So from that point of view, maybe 6 months in Barcelona, just to get his head in the right place, would be beneficial. But from a footballing point of view, I can't really understand why Barcelona would go for him. And from his point of view, I just don't think he's going to play a whole bunch. He'll come off the bench in games. He'll get 20, 30 minutes. He'll be a rotational piece, but he's not going to be a key pillar of that team, which surely he wants to be at this point in his career.
There's no option for that, though. Like, that doesn't exist. Clearly, that doesn't exist right now. And if you're Marcus Rashford, from his perspective, I think this would be a no-brainer. Like, if you get out of Manchester, I think that's a job well done. And maybe you play, maybe you don't. But right now, you're not going to play. Ruben Amorim's coming out and saying to the media, I will put my 63-year-old goalkeeping coach on the bench for a Manchester United game before I put a player who's not trying in training.
Which was a bit
referring
far.
to Marcus
Rashford.
Amorim's
gone a bit far there with that comment.
Yeah, it's a great bit. In general, I have no notes on this saga. Like, this is a 10 out of 10. It keeps getting better. I love all of this so much from a popcorn eating perspective. If you're Marcus Rashford, the reason why you would go, I think it's just so obvious. You don't have any room to go anywhere in Manchester right now. It makes sense even if you're getting the scraps at the table for these kinds of things. Again, you're allowed to sign players who aren't going to start for you. Like, I understand what you're saying, Graham, that Rashford is not the player that he used to be, But if you're a team, maybe it's not Barcelona because none of us trust Barcelona to do anything smart financially. Maybe we go back to one of the other examples, Milan or whoever. If you get the contract stuff right with Manchester United, and again, I think that is very much what's holding up anything with Marcus Rashford right now. If you can get Manchester United to cover enough of the salary that you're comfortable with, I still think Marcus Rashford could help a team. I don't think that means he's going to be starting. But again, for Barcelona, they've got 3 of those wingers. One of them is a child, and the other one is the backup number 9. Like, you're a bit pressed for bodies. I can see why teams would want to sign a body here.
It just seems to me that Man United have so little leverage in this whole negotiation. Hey, we've got this player who's on really high wages, who clearly has no future with this team. You want him? You want him? Yeah.
I mean, and that's why I think I agree with Joe. And I think that was the point I made in that episode, is that, like, if you're Manchester United, I don't see why you're not entertaining like offers of 10 million from a like smaller Premier League club who could give him a decent wage if he truly wants to get back into form and back into like the England squad potentially. Because I am kind of taking him at his word, or at his team's word on that front, because otherwise, why wouldn't you just take the money from Saudi Arabia if you're just about getting that paycheck? I do think there's probably a combination of factors there. It feels to me like he kind of doesn't know what he wants, and I think the club knows exactly what they want, and so it leads to this situation in which he doesn't really have to move because he can just sit there and collect his wages until, 2028 or whatever the year is. But at the same time, he's certainly not going to get playing time. I don't think things are going to change for him. I think it's kind of gone beyond a breaking point. And I think also at this point, it's a statement situation for Ruben Amorim, who I think by all accounts has been informed that this is an ongoing situation and has been a problem going back to maybe Jose Mourinho, that players have too much power at Manchester United, that players don't really have to train the way they're asked to. They don't really have to perform the roles they're asked to, because ultimately they'll just wait for the next manager. They kind of have the power. They're the ones with the money and the cachet. And I think for Amorim, who has really staked his career and reputation in some ways on this move to Manchester United, I think he has to kind of stand by his guns, stand by his principles, and get everybody kind of on side that, look, if you're not doing what I ask of you, even if you're Marcus Rashford, I'm happy to let you sit there in training and never play. And I think that that's kind of where we find ourselves now. I think the most realistic situation at present is that Rashford either gets some sort of ridiculous loan that doesn't really make much sense to me, gets a sort of cut rate transfer, or the most likely is he's just there and doesn't play again this season, or maybe plays bits and pieces if and when things change. But I see that not really happening anytime soon. So it's a bit of a conundrum that I'm glad I don't have to navigate.
Maybe there's a better chance that the 63-year-old goalkeeping coach goes to Barcelona and gets registered at this point. We shall see how that one pans out. Sticking with United, Alejandro Garnacho. Graham seems to be linked with Chelsea, with Napoli, with a few other clubs. What's going on there?
Yeah, so a week ago there was real momentum behind this interest from Chelsea in Garnacho. Man United admitted in a letter sent to a number of fans groups that they are at risk of a PSR punishment at some point this year. So even though they escaped one for the last deadline, there's a real fear that they are going to get something this summer. So obviously selling Garnacho would be beneficial for that position, as they could put the fee down as pure profit. I know he comes from Atletico Madrid as a teenager, I think like a 15-year-old, but the way the rules are written, he is an academy player for all intents and purposes. The story seems to have cooled a bit in these past few days, because it felt like last week almost like a deal was imminent with Chelsea, but the fee that was mentioned was €70 million, which I don't think would be the worst value for Garnacho from Manchester United's point of view, but I still think selling Garnacho would make a really damning statement about where Manchester United are at the moment. I think he's one of the very few players. He is far from the finished product. He's very raw, Alejandro Garnacho, but he is one of the very few players that they should be harnessing and building around and trying to develop. And the fact that they might have to sell him to a direct rival in the Premier League, and not just a direct rival, but a team that is feasibly competing for the same things as Manchester United. It's not like selling them to Man City or Arsenal, who are like a level above. It's Chelsea we're talking about here. I think that says a lot about how this club has been run these past few years, that they seem to have backed themselves into a corner over Garnacho. And potentially Menu as well, who's the other one that's been mentioned as a player they would feasibly sell to ease the PSR concerns.
Mentioned, but there's no rumors, right, with Manu?
Not at this point, no. That was an Ornstein report about a couple of weeks ago, last time we spoke, that Manchester United were open for bids, but I don't think that is likely to happen.
And I still think that's more of a everything's for sale. It just depends on the price. And I agree with you, Graham. I think it does speak about the situation the club find themselves in. They are attempting to stop hemorrhaging money, which is some of where the Ineos cuts have come in. And I think that's where the sale of Garnacho is more tenable to the ownership, because they can kind of pull in that pure profit and then reinvest as they want to. I think it was more appealing when it felt like he had no place in Amorim's tactics. When it was sort of, you're a winger, there's no wingers in this system, you don't really fit at wing back, we tried that, mixed results there. So maybe you sell on a player who you can capitalize on at a huge amount of money, where they're not maybe going to fit into the system, and then reinvest that into players that will. However, I think since a lot of this reporting happened, he has Garnacho, but I guess according to reports, according to quotes from Amorim himself, has responded really well to the changes in tactics, to what's being asked of him in training, is doing a better job of playing as sort of the dual number 10s alongside Bruno, is understanding his defensive responsibilities more and how to operate more centrally. And so I do wonder if some of the cooling of this rumor has to do with Garnacho now seeming like he could fit into the squad, isn't going to be a square peg, and so then you don't need to go out and replace him with somebody who can play the system. If you have somebody who already can, then you can save that money and try to figure out other ways to cut costs, like getting rid of Marcus Rashford.
I think he's started Manchester United's last 5 games, which almost feels like a message from Ruben Amorim to say, don't sell this player. I actually have a use for this player. From the Chelsea point of view, I can see why they'd be interested in him.
Sure.
It's not, a winger's maybe not the greatest pressing need for them. I think a lot of fans would say they definitely need a new goalkeeper and potentially a new centre-back as well. But Maresca, I went through the numbers and their starting lineups from this season earlier. Maresca's used 5 different players on the left side this season. I think Jadon Sancho has probably made the biggest impact in that position, but I think there are doubts over Pedro Neto's ability to impact a game at this level. João Felix is being touted around in this window. No takers so far, but it feels like he's on the periphery as well. And Cuckoo has been linked with Bayern Munich and Manchester United, and as part of the Garnacho deal as well. So there could be a need for Chelsea to add another wide player, and this very much plays into their project, right, of signing talented young players and developing them. So I can see from Chelsea's point of view why they would be interested.
Yeah, the Nkunku one especially, that kind of rumored swap deal, that did make a ton of sense, because Nkunku doesn't want to play wide, and that's where Maresca, I think, wants to try to use him. He doesn't really want to be a sole number 9. He doesn't really function that well doing that, so he's not going to be even really that strong of a backup to Nicholas Jackson, though he can do that. He wants to be basically what Cole Palmer is doing, and they already have Cole Palmer doing that, so then you're looking at him as a backup, a reserve option. But if you can flip him for a player who can come in and play in that wide position and do it really, really well, it makes sense for Chelsea. I think there's a point in time in which it made sense for Manchester United, or at least more sense for Manchester United. I think if Garnacho can do the job, and then you can hold on to the younger player who probably commands a higher fee down the road, you probably do that if you are Manchester United. But I think it speaks to the situation that they are trying to kind of navigate this one, and maybe potentially being open to a deal. I think it also speaks to Amorim kind of pointing the other way of Rashford, of here's a player who didn't fit what I wanted, and I guess there's also allegations that he wasn't training to the level that was expected, or wasn't doing some of the defensive training that was needed. And so he did get a little bit of a break there. He was sat on the bench, and then he responds really well, and now he's back in the team. And I think if you're Amorim, you have these two examples of guy who wasn't performing how I needed him to, responded well in training, and is now back in the team. Guy who's Marcus Rashford, and by all accounts is not, aside from his own reporting, is not really responding in training, is not doing some of the things that are asked. And so here we are.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, plenty more deals to talk about, including Patrick Dorgu potentially coming to Old Trafford, and Douglas Luiz also maybe heading back to Manchester. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our January transfer spesh. Patrick Dorgu, apparently, maybe, close to a Man United deal, Joe. What do we know about Dorgu? Lecce, left-sided defender or winger? What else do we know?
I thought we were going to come to our own Serie A correspondent, Ryan Bailey, for this, but I will happily go through the
I'm
list.
just asking you.
No, I really like this move from Manchester United. I think this is a really fun move. 20 years old, you mentioned Lecce already. The reporting is £25 million move plus add-ons that maybe could get it closer to 30. He's got 4 caps with Denmark so far. I'll be honest, I wasn't especially familiar with Dorgu before going in and diving into some research here. My scouting report, he's left-footed. He can play on either side. But the projection here is that he's going to be a left wing back for Amorim, which makes a lot of sense. He's played fullback, wing back, winger on basically both sides. only 3 Serie A defenders have attempted more take-ons. So, if I'm dribbling with the ball at Ryan Bailey and I try to get past him and I try to, go towards goal, that'd be a take-on. Yeah, good luck. Ryan, fierce center back Bailey. Although, Ryan is not a half-bad center back from my experience. Anyway, only 3 Serie A defenders have attempted more of those take-ons than Dorgu this year. He's also got the 8th longest average carrying distance among Serie A defenders. The dude is physically imposing, is quick to progress up the wing, and is a solid dribbler. I think he's got some work to do defensively, 1v1, but you can live with some of that if you've got an extra center back kind of giving you some cover behind, and if you've got some help in midfield. And also, again, he's young. He's 20 years old. He's only in his 2nd season as a professional player, period. The fact that he's already involved with Denmark at the international level, the fact that he has been getting so many minutes and doing a lot of standout stuff for a bad team in Serie A is impressive. So I like this move quietly for Manchester United. I feel weird saying that because it feels like they've gotten a lot more wrong than right in the transfer market recently, maybe even more than just recently, but I think this fills a need for them, and I think Dorgu is a high potential player.
Yeah, and he fills a real problem position for Manchester United. They basically don't have a left wing back in their squad right now. I know Dalot has been playing there, and he can do a job there. I think he was very good in that match against Liverpool at Anfield that they drew 2-2. But even Dalot is a right back by trade. He prefers to play on the right side. Luke Shaw is still injured. You'll be shocked to hear. Although actually, I think he might have returned to training today,
yes.
which was hilarious on the day that Manchester United are supposed to be signing a left back. He might be back fit. But anyway, it'll take him a while to get back to match sharpness. And then Tyrell Malacia, who himself was out for like 2 seasons with an injury. Frankly, I just don't think he's good enough from what I've seen of Tyrell Malacia. So yeah, a real problem position for Manchester United. And it always felt like if they were going to enter the market in this window in this month, it was going to be for a left-sided player. And it seems like they found that player.
The Luke Shaw thing is hysterical, that as soon as there's another contender, he's like, oh, okay, I guess I'll get up off the chaise lounge and come and do some training or something. I'll stop eating pizza and have a glass of water. But I also think there's a chance that he plays as a left-sided center back in the back 3 for Emerim, and then Dorgu is more or less a starter as soon as he can be, because it's definitely a thing they need, and it's a thing that they've been scouting for over a year, according to reports. So it makes me, a Manchester United supporter, optimistic, even if it is a weird one to be excited about. A January left-back signing, that's going to change it all.
It's the price point that Manchester United should be going for at this point, right? Where if they get it wrong, it's not a huge stakes signing like the Anthony one, where they just can't shift him on. He's moved on to Real Betis, but it's on loan because they can't get anyone to give them any kind of money for him, similar with Marcus Rashford. I know he's an academy product. But a left-back for €30 million, €35 million with add-ons, that feels like where Man United should be shopping at this point.
Agreed. It's a strange one, because on the one hand, I agree with you entirely, Graham, that there's another reality in which Lecce were holding out for $40 million, and in past iterations of Manchester United, somehow they end up paying like $45 million for him, because that's a thing that they sometimes did. On the flip side, I believe prior to this move, Lecce's record sale was like 1.5 million euros. So there is an element here of, I think Lecce still knew who they were dealing with and knew they could get some money out of this one, and they did. But I do still think it is a good bit of business for Manchester United. Now let's just see what happens on the pitch.
Yeah. Do you know who won't be happy about this, Taylor? Lecce's most famous fan. Do you know who that is?
Ryan Bailey.
Close. Dame Helen Mirren.
What?
Very close. You're going to have to explain that one, Ryan. Why?
She's been spotted at a number of their games. I think she's got a property near there, basically. She's their biggest fan. Most famous, I should say. She won't like this.
Well done, Lecce. That's a good world's biggest fan to have.
Good get, right? Very good. Let's move on to something non-Man United related. Douglas Luiz, obviously on the books at Man City, was at Girona for a number of seasons. Also bossed it at Aston Villa. Not so hot, Graham, with Juventus. What's going on with him at Juventus, and why might he be back on the move to England?
Yeah, so there is interest from Man City in re-signing Douglas Luiz. Of course, came through the Man City Academy before going to Aston Villa. They actually held a buyback clause on him for a couple of seasons while he was at Villa. Of course, that expired the moment he went to Juventus. But apparently, City only want a loan deal for Douglas Luiz, whereas Juve want to sell him permanently. So there seems to be a bit of an impasse there. We should also mention that there is a lot of noise around Andrea Cambiasso, who Man City really like, but that one seems more likely to happen this summer because I think Juve are hoping for a big fee for him. And Man City, can't find that financial room right now. But I think there's potential for this to be a good move for both parties, where City if they get in the Aston Villa Douglas Luiz, who was so effective at playing a quick transition game under Unai Emery, and we spoke on the weekend review about how City are changing as a team and are looking to be a bit more direct. I think Douglas Luiz could be a good fit for that sort of team. If, however, we're talking about the Juventus Douglas Luiz, maybe not, because there's been some questions over his commitment, over his work rate. Thiago Motta has very quickly decided that he's not for him. But either way, I think it would probably be a stopgap for City to get him into the team, hence why they apparently only want to sign him on loan.
I think that's a great breakdown, Graham. This whole thing is so weird to me from the Juventus perspective, given how much they paid for him last summer. They paid 50 million euros for him, though there were also a couple of players that headed the other way as part of a separate deal. It's a bit of a strange situation, but they paid a lot of money for Douglas Luiz. And you're absolutely right. He has not become a part of Thiago Motta's team this year. He's only got 3 league starts in Serie A. He's also missed 12 games with injury this season. It just seems so odd that they would give up on Luiz so quickly. Someone they spent so much money on. Graham, why is that not a thing? Like, why are Juve not trying to recoup some investment here if they only want to get rid of him permanently?
Well, I think they are.
I guess that's true. Recoup all of their investment or more. They're not going to do that if they move him in January.
Yeah, I think it seems like Motta already feels like Thiago Motta's at a crossroads with his team, where he's remolding, he's building the plane as it's flying, and Duran Vlahovic is now out of the picture, and Kolo Muani's in, and so he's trying to push out Douglas Luiz. I think the idea is they maybe get another central midfielder in this window as well. So I think it's just down to Motta remolding the team, and if you're not as one of his guys, you're getting pushed out.
I'm sure you're right. Like that, I guess that is the only possible explanation. It is just truly insane to me that you would go and drop that much money for him, for your new coach to come around 3 league starts later and say, yeah, no, I'm good. Like, we can flush some of that money down the drain. Thanks. That's wild. Like, I think we were, maybe not everybody, but I was certainly high on Juve's transfer window over the offseason. I feel like we were generally pretty positive about a lot of the work they'd done. And for me, a lot of that was Douglas Luiz, because he was just that good in the Premier League with Aston Villa. And I don't know, something feels off here. Something feels strange to me.
We shall see how that one pans out. All right, I can't believe we've got this far in the running order, and we've buried the lead on this show on probably the best player in the game right now, Joe. Timo Werner. Timo Werner apparently heading to MLS. What do we know about this one?
Yeah, this is great. I love that you had to lead me into this. There was some reporting about Timo Werner potentially signing for the New York Red Bulls. Tottenham, for pretty obvious reasons, don't really care to have him on loan anymore from RB Leipzig. RB Leipzig also, he's not been playing very well in the Premier League. He's certainly not been scoring very many goals in the Premier League. RB Leipzig reportedly are okay to sell him. So we will see what happens here. I think this is still fairly early on in this process. In one sense, in that I don't think it's any sort of sure thing that Timo Werner is going to be moving to the New York Red Bulls in Major League Soccer. In another sense, this is now the second transfer window in a row where Timo Werner has been linked to the New York Red Bulls. This was a thing back in the summer as well. His contract with Leipzig runs through next summer. It is possible that he comes to MLS this winter. It's not impossible that Leipzig sell him for $15 million somewhere else, because we know that the New York branch is not going to be paying $15 million to the other branch that doesn't really accomplish a whole lot for Red Bull Global. So if they can find a sizable chunk of change for Werner elsewhere, I think it's possible he moves somewhere, or he could go to New York, which I think would be a really potentially excellent signing for the Red Bulls. As poor as he's been for Tottenham in terms of his finishing and hasn't played a whole lot of minutes either, the Red Bulls need attacking quality. And if even he rediscovers half of his form with Leipzig back when he was actually banging in goals in the Bundesliga, that was a long time ago now, like five years or so ago now.
Yeah.
If he finds some of that for the Red Bulls, they are going to be in a good spot.
Joe, how does he fit into this team in a tactical sense? Because I agree on a talent, on an individual talent basis, Clearly he improves that squad. But Dante Van Zier is that's official, right? He's
only
gone.
YouTube watchers are going to see Ryan's face.
Ryan's face. Ryan, you're going to have the chance to watch him live on the 24th of August at the Bank. Have you got your tickets already?
When he scores
I'm all
against
for
Charlotte,
it on the opposite team, Graham.
oh, I'm so excited. When he scores against Charlotte, it's going to be
so good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, in terms of the tactical fit, Graham, I think it's pretty natural, actually. The Red Bulls have done a bit of DP shuffling this offseason. They've signed Eric Maxim Choupo-Moting as a DP, which is, I don't think, super inspiring, although I do think he makes the team better. And they've shipped out Dante Van Zier, who was playing as part of often a two-forward front last season. And Van Zier leaving opens up another striker spot for Timo Werner, theoretically. And then they can move Lewis Morgan maybe out to the wing, which I think Lewis Morgan is quite content to do.
But is
He's
Werner
good.
a striker at this point in his career? Because he's played a lot on the wing the last couple of seasons. Ryan is loving this section.
I think he absolutely can be a striker. I like the idea of Werner playing underneath Choupo-Moting. I think that would be fairly effective for the Red Bulls. But the nice thing about Senator Schwarz's team, if Timo Werner comes over, and even without him, they got a lot of positionally flexible attackers, where Morgan can play as a 9, or he can play wider. Forsberg can play more centrally, or he can play in the half spaces. Choupo-Moting can play up top. He's the sort of the fixed point in this attack. But Werner, you can play next to Choupo-Moting, or you can play Morgan next to him, and you play Werner out wide. There's so many different ways to do this. Folks will know that I'm very much get talent that roughly fits into a team and figure that stuff out. I think Werner is talented enough that it makes sense for the Red Bulls to take a shot here. There is risk, though. Like, Ryan's hatred of Timo Werner has some foundation in that he has not been playing good soccer.
Let's not go there. I think he's amazing.
Ryan loves Timo Werner. The reason why I would jump on this if I was a Red Bulls fan, I would be happy about this if I was a Red Bulls fan, is we just have no inclination that they're going to go get somebody better, right? If this happens, their two most impressive DP signings over the last bunch of years, basically since Thierry Henry was in the door, both will have come from RB Leipzig, where Emil Forsberg came over for a few $1 million that they moved from one pocket to another last winter, and it would be Timo Werner. We have no data that says, yeah, the Red Bulls are going to go out there and make a really ambitious Cucho Hernandez, Lucho Acosta, Carles Gil, whatever, difference-making type of signing outside of their own football family. That just doesn't seem to be something that they want to do. Timo Werner is in a weird spot. He's an outcast at Red Bull Global right now. He needs to go somewhere. And it just happens that they've got a team that he would probably potentially improve in the New York Red Bulls.
When you are dying of dehydration, even the tiniest bit of water is going to help. And when you are a Red Bull supporter who hasn't had a ton of joy, except for like the Forsberg signing, to bring in Timo Werner, that's a name, you're going to be excited about it. I think you're going to ignore some of the negatives of his career because I think he is going to be a popular figure. And I think he hasn't been that in so long. I do wonder, on a very emotional, non-analytics level, if him going to Red Bulls would be really good for him as a weight off, hey, this is fun to play again. I'm enjoying this. People like seeing me kick a soccer ball. I do wonder if we would see a little bit of resurgence in his form. The one... amongst the other downsides that have been mentioned, the one other negative I would spotlight with this rumor is just that I'm not sure Spurs can let him go right now for two reasons. Number one, they literally don't have many players. And so he is a player
himself,
that,
I think, right now.
There is that. But I think also just the optics of, at a time when there are accusations that they haven't spent well, they haven't invested in the squad, they haven't given enough depth and enough quality in that depth, to then have one of your transfers in the January window be a sale of a player who you don't even really own. It's basically just canceling his loan so his parent club can sell him. I imagine that would not go over well amongst the supporters base. There have been rumors today that they're linked with a few other players, including, I think, a loan move for Matis Tell from Bayern Munich. So maybe if Spurs make a few moves, then that one is more okay. I don't think it would be a huge source of outrage for Tottenham supporters. I think it's just a bad look that they would probably rather avoid right now when they already have so many highly public bad looks.
I think Big Ange would be okay with it. I think the only person who hates Timo Werner more than Ryan Bailey right now is Big Ange, given some of the comments that he's made about him. I was smiling to myself, Taylor, when you were talking about him, Timo Werner, just on an emotional level, feeling better about himself, enjoying his football, and envisaging him rocking up to the bank in August, feeling really good about himself, and Ryan just boo, just abusing him, abusing the life out of him.
What Tifo I've got lined up, Graham. It's going to be spectacular. I can't wait.
I can't wait to see it.
Presumably, this is Jurgen Klopp pulling the strings on this intercompany transfer as well. So that'd be curious how much of a role he has in the distribution.
He's playing Padel right now, or paddle or whatever it is, so he can't really focus on transfers.
I'd love to see him playing paddle.
Yeah.
How aggressive he'd be if he lost a point. That'd be incredible.
I think he's flying at the X Games.
I wonder if he has that really sort of disconcerting, when he's really angry, does his smile just get bigger? That's what I think of his Klopp. If he's really mad about the way a game went, is he just, I'm smiling, but I'm very furious.
You don't want to catch his eye in that circumstance. Definitely not. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, let's take a look at who may be going to Saudi Arabia and some done deals, including, but not limited to, Naomi Girma making her record-breaking transfer to Chelsea. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our transfer discussion. Graham, Saudi Arabia, who might be heading there? We're hearing maybe Victor Boniface might be heading to a Saudi team, but also Jhon Duran apparently on the radar of Saudi at the moment. What's happening there? Is there going to be some big money spent from that league?
So those two deals seem to be linked. So Al Nassr, Saudi Pro League team, they're going to sign a big name forward before the window closes. And the player that they've been targeting over the past week is Victor Boniface. And yesterday it was widely reported that Al Nassr had agreed a fee of €60 million with Leverkusen for Boniface. The player had agreed personal terms as well. So that one seemed to be very much on the way to happening. But in the last 24 hours, Al Nassr, they've stalled that deal. They've given themselves a bit more time to have a bite at Jhon Duran. Darwin Núñez is also someone that they've been interested in the last few weeks, but Liverpool don't want to sell. I think they rejected a bid of €70 million for Darwin Núñez pretty early in the window. But Sky Germany reported this morning that Al Nassr have lodged a bid of €58 million with Aston Villa for Jhon Duran. I would be shocked if Aston Villa accepted that. I honestly think Al Nassr would need to be closer to the €100 million mark for Aston Villa to sell Duran in this window. They're in the Champions League. I think they've qualified for the next round already, Aston Villa, so they've got knockout Champions League games coming. He is a player who's starting for them at this point. I know the story earlier in the season was that it was this incredible super sub, but he's now a key player in that team. But it seems like Al Nassr's strategy is to strike deals for a couple players, 2 or 3 players, and then decide between them before the window closes. So this is definitely one to keep an eye on.
And I do wonder, Graham, if another strategy is to look at clubs that are maybe at risk of PSR breaches. And Villa, there was some speculation that they were really towing that line with some of the transfers they have done earlier in the season. Maybe making it to the next round of the Champions League and potentially qualifying again next season alleviates some of that burden. But I do wonder if that's where some of this interest has come from, a feeling of, with the right amount and not in a huge amount, like the number you're quoting, Graham, maybe they could get him away because of that kind of PSR income would really help Villa. I still think it would be a mistake for Villa. I think it would be a mistake for Jhon Duran. I think it might be a better idea for Victor Boniface, who basically had, and I don't say this critically, like he has the one huge season with Leverkusen, then he's injured. I don't know. You win the Bundesliga, take that bag, and run. Because at this point, Leverkusen have Patrick Schick that they're going to be starting, so Boniface is going to be like a partner or a deputy to him. And I think for Leverkusen, they could use that money and kind of reinvest in the squad in a number of different positions. So I think it makes more sense for Leverkusen to sell Boniface than it does Villa to sell Duran. That's just my opinion, though.
I think he's missed more than half the games for Leverkusen since he signed from Union in Belgium. And they've been rotating, to your point, Taylor, they've been rotating really effectively between Patrick Schick, who is scoring goals for fun recently, and
8 goals
Nathan
in his
Tella.
last 5 starts, Patrick Schick, by the way. 8 goals
Not
in his
bad,
last 5.
not bad.
Insane.
And Nathan Tella, who is a slightly more kind of mobile, does the sort of false nine thing for Leverkusen in that centre-forward position. But I feel like even if Leverkusen were to sell Victor Boniface, I don't think they would panic buy. I think they would maybe wait till the summer to assess the situation. They feel too well run for that sort of thing.
I feel like, with how well run they are, I feel like they would be spending this time figuring out who they're going to buy when they sell Florian Wirtz for $120 million. That's what I kind of feel like they'd be doing right now. And then they'd be looking at who they're going to invest that money in. And they're planning that far ahead.
Very good. All right. Joe, Neymar has not taken advantage of Chicago Fire's discovery rights, has had his contract terminated in Saudi, has headed home back to Santos. What do we make of this one? Is it a shame that we won't get to see him on US shores occasionally playing 17 minutes of a game?
I would not take that off the table in a year or two's time. So I'll start there. I think it is still very, very, very possible, bordering on maybe going to happen, that Neymar still finds his way to MLS. Though it could depend a little bit on how this stint with Santos goes. I love that this is happening, though. I think Chicago probably should not have signed him until we get more evidence that Neymar can actually play soccer again. For context, and I know that a lot of this has come up recently, injuries have been massively impactful for Neymar. He hasn't played more than 2,000 league minutes since 2016-17. That's a long time ago. Just for those tracking along at home, that's a really, really long time ago. I love the idea of him going back to Santos because you get the sort of hometown boy comes back. It's the club that he came up with. It's the one he moves to go to Barcelona from. I love that story. Like, I'm a sucker for that. And if it works out, we get to watch Neymar again. I won't watch as much of him as I would if he was in Major League Soccer, but I'm just pulling for this guy to get back to something. And it doesn't have to be like even what he was before, but something, because even that player is going to be extremely impactful, and getting him back to a club he knows well, an area he knows well, I like it. Like, I really, really like this move.
It would be nice for him to have some success in the autumn years of his career. I totally agree with that, Joe. Although, Taylor, I did look up, his sister's birthday is March 11th, so he'd have to miss the start of any MLS season if he did come over. So
I have to believe Santos are okay with that. Maybe Chicago would be as well. I think he's going to get a good bit of leeway to do as he wants with his time in Santos. It's a really interesting situation that he finds himself in, because I think the reporting that I have seen is basically that he didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia in the first place, that he wanted to stay in Europe. And then there is kind of the conflicted reporting of, was it that he had massive wage demands and nobody could meet those demands, or was it that PSG wanted a massive transfer fee for him that no European club was going to pay? I suspect maybe it's a little bit of both. Exactly. And so Saudi Arabia come in with the wage, with the transfer fee, so PSG is happy, Neymar is theoretically happy. But if you then buy into the idea that still recovering from injuries, still not fully fit, and maybe heart not fully in it, even if he is making money, then this move home makes a ton of sense, to the extent that I think the reporting is that he gave up like $25 million or $30 million of his existing contract, which I think had about $65 million left on it. So he's still making $30 taking this deal with Saudi Arabia, but now he gets to go home to Brazil with his boyhood club, make some money still, have money coming in from the club he no longer plays for, live in Brazil. I think we'll see a happier Neymar. I don't know if that means we will see a fitter, resurgent Neymar. I hope we do, because he's still, I think he's about to be 32, or he's about to be 30. Yeah, he turns 32 in February. So still has plenty of time, and to Joe's point, could then make that move to Major League Soccer if that's a thing that appeals to him and kind of gives him that motivation. I would just be bummed if it was another situation in which he then goes to MLS. Heart really isn't in it, and we see a very limited return for the investment that would be required to get Neymar there.
I love this transfer from the point of view of Santos apparently want to link him up with Josh Windass. That's the striker they want to partner him with, who is kind of journeyman English Championship striker who plays for Sheffield Wednesday. I know him from when he was at Rangers and wasn't very good for Rangers a number of years ago. And I just love that. Neymar and Josh Windass, who is the son of Dean Windass, who older listeners might remember.
Vintage.
Playing for Santos this season would be a nuts storyline. I can't wait to see it.
Just to interject before Ryan does whatever joke he's about to do, I love this is, I guess, some inside baseball stuff. I love Tom Bogert has reported a bunch about Josh Windass going to Santos, and in general about Josh Windass, like maybe coming to MLS and going to other places. And you look at Tom's social media feed, and it's like Dejan Joveljic maybe going to Tigres, and Lucho Acosta maybe going somewhere else, and a trade inside of MLS, and then it's Josh Windass going to Santos. And it's like, which of these things is not like the other? Shout out to Tom. He's putting in work.
There you go. You're not getting my joke now, Joe.
Now we are.
Fine. Windass is a funny surname. Let's move on to Naomi Girma, breaking the women's world transfer record, moving from San Diego Wave to Chelsea for $1.1 million this week. Joe, a very significant transfer, obviously, for the women's game. What do we make of this one? We imagine she's going to provide tremendous value for Chelsea now.
Yeah, she's awesome. Naomi Girma is like unimpeachable at center back. She is just so incredibly solid, so good in attack. In terms of her distribution ability, so good defensively in terms of her ability to read the game. She is that Maldini quote. Like that's how she plays at center back, about not having to make challenges because she's already in the right spot to begin with, that there's no need to dive in and make a slide tackle. She is just unbelievably good, and this move move from Chelsea does break the previous transfer record in the women's game that was set by Bay FC when they signed Rachel Kunananji from Madrid CFF last year. ESPN had a really good piece from a number of their excellent writers about this move and how it came together. Other clubs were interested too for Naomi Girma, which should not be a surprise. Lyon, apparently, according to ESPN, also bid $1.1 million, the same fee as Chelsea, but they didn't really want to get into a bidding war with Chelsea, and I think Girma wanted to go to Chelsea. Also, Chelsea was probably willing to pay her a little bit more money along the way. Girma wanted to go, which it's not a great thing for San Diego. This, in general, this exodus of talent from the NWSL this offseason has been a bit of a concern. Maybe I'll get to that more in just a minute. The waiver a mess. They've been hemorrhaging talent. Jaden Shaw going to the North Carolina Courage. Now Girma going over to Chelsea. I'm sure they did not want to lose either of those players, but Naomi Girma very clearly wanted to go to Chelsea to experience something different. This is like the home run of all home run transfer signings. That it breaks a record and breaks that seven-figure milestone marker is cool, and Girma is very deserving of that. But more than anything, we're going to see transfer values continue to go up for players at the international level on the women's side. These moves are going to get more and more expensive. Girma is, of course, worthy of doing this kind of thing, but on top of that, she's just going to be a rock star for Chelsea. She is going to be one of the best players in the English top flight because she's one of the best players on the planet.
Yeah. Graham, definitely a boon for the Women's Super League, this move. Maybe not so much for NWSL, as Joe's outlined.
Yeah, I'm interested in that exodus that Joe talks about there from the NWSL, because I kind of wonder if the main driver of this isn't the WSL, although there's been growth in that league over the last 2-3 seasons with clubs like Chelsea and Arsenal, even Manchester United and City, of course, spending money and having superstar players. I kind of wonder if the real driver is the Women's Champions League, and that is definitely an ambition. It's been an ambition for a long time for Chelsea to win that competition. It was the thing that Emma Hayes talked about as her Everest, her managerial Everest. It was the thing that kind of shocked me that she left Chelsea to go and take the US job, that she hadn't won the Women's Champions League yet. But she's obviously left the club. Chelsea still have this ambition, and they've brought in Sonia Bonpastor from Lyon as their new head coach. They're spending money. They already have arguably the best centre-back partnership in the WSL right now between Millie Bright and Natalie Bjorn. I think the idea is Girma will start over Bjorn being the best centre-back in world football. But nonetheless, they're building depth. And that seems to be something that a lot of the WSL teams are doing right now, is building depth so that they can compete on all fronts. And hopefully, from their point of view, compete against primarily Barcelona, who are the dominant team in European football right now. So I think that seems to be the real driver, is the standing and the stature and the prestige that the Women's Champions League is taking on in the global game.
Yeah, I think that's very real, Grim. That's a really, really good shout, and that wasn't down in my notes. On top of that, and maybe I think this is a bit more tangible in some ways. Aaron West, who is the husband of Yael Averbuch West, who is the GM of Gotham FC, and maybe some listeners will know Aaron from, he does stuff on CBS and is very involved in the media space. He put this out on Blue Sky yesterday. This recent exodus of some NWSL's biggest stars, Girma is on that list, Caroline's on that list, she's gone to Man City, phenomenal player. Jenna Neiswanger is reportedly headed to Arsenal, basically as we speak. That's the exodus that we're talking about. The recent exodus of some of the NWSL's biggest stars has to be a wake-up for the league, that the cap is pitifully low compared to how women's football is progressing around the globe, and specifically in Europe. Again, this is the spouse of an NWSL general manager, which I think is really notable in this context, and I think he's right. I think he's absolutely right. When we're talking about Naomi Girma going to Chelsea, she went to Chelsea ultimately because, they got enough to San Diego to get the deal done, but they also got enough to Girma to get the deal done. She is making, I'm sure, a pretty penny for Chelsea. In terms of the NWSL impact here, which I think is fascinating on a lot of levels, I'm parroting Evan Davis, who does fantastic work covering the women's game for expected own goals and the equalizer. And Evan made a point that the NWSL can outbid basically everybody in the world except for Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Barca, and Lyon. All 5 of those teams have come up unprompted in our discussion that we've had so far about this move. That's a problem. I don't see any world in which this Naomi Girma move is a good thing for the NWSL, which Naomi Girma shouldn't care about that. Like, go get your bag, go do whatever you want to do. That's great. And Naomi Girma is going to thrive there, as we've made very clear. But this is a bit concerning for the NWSL. We've seen these kinds of exoduses before, right? I don't know if folks remember Rose Lavelle or Sam Mewis going to sign with Man City back in, 2020? Somewhere around there. Those were short-term deals. Those were 1-year contracts. Girma's on a 4-year deal with Chelsea. Caroline's on a 3.5-year deal. This is not, I want to go and try something for a little bit and then I'm going to come back. That may well be the case, as it turns out, if they end up coming back to the NWSL. That's possible. But this is like players going to play a big chunk of their careers, if all things go according to plan, at a league that is not the NWSL. And I just don't see that being a good thing whatsoever for the league. I think folks inside the NWSL should be concerned, because there's no reason that the NWSL shouldn't have the ambition to be the best league in the world. on the women's side. There's just no reason that shouldn't be the ambition. They have the money, they have the resources, they have the ownership. Valuations are increasing. They're adding more teams. Go outspend these teams. Go outspend Arsenal. Go outspend Chelsea. Go outspend City and Barca and Lyon. You're not going to keep everybody. But seeing two of the best players in your league, in Girma and Caroline, go over to an inferior league, frankly, from top to bottom quality, but to a couple of great teams in that league, yeah, that should leave a bitter taste in the NWSL's mouth.
Yeah. Perhaps, Taylor, there's an economic reality here that maybe the NWSL positions itself as a selling league, given the scenario we have.
I think that would be a tough sell for a lot of supporters. I think because they've been, at least perceived themselves as like one of the dominant leagues in the planet, one of the most stable leagues
and they
at
are.
that, I think. And
they are.
But I think have been caught by a lot of other leagues. And you look at the attendances, you look at the enthusiasm, you look at the money spent. Joe's outlined it really, really well. I think that is a possible way they could go, and I think it wouldn't be the stupidest decision, but at the same time, I think you are immediately saying we are no longer the nation that sort of owns women's soccer, and I don't think the United States really is at this point, but at the same time, that's been the brand for so long. I think it's a hard truth to kind of back down from, a hard reality to back down from, or live within.
Yeah, I don't think there's any chance that the NWSL positions itself to be a selling league. I don't think that's what they want to do, nor do I think that would make any sense from a business perspective. Like, they are in a good spot to not monopolize, because that's not the state of the game anymore. They're in a good spot to be the place. And I don't know if there's still some like bleed over from the men's game that makes going to Chelsea so attractive, right? Like, that is something the NWSL doesn't have. You can go to I know the Portland Thorns and the Portland Timbers aren't attached anymore for reasons. But like, I'm thinking about if those two were attached, or maybe a better example would be like the Orlando Pride and Orlando City. You're not going to sign for the Orlando Pride because, man, I remember watching Orlando City when I was a kid, and that was a huge part of why I fell in love with soccer. I think American soccer players and players around the world still associate the maybe there's a little bit of association between Chelsea and the men's team and Man City and the men's team.
I think there is.
Into the women's game. And that's something that the NWSL does not have going for it, right? That is a challenge and something for the league to overcome. But man, it just is, this is tough. This is a tricky thing. And this isn't a new reality just because this deal happened for Girma, nor do I want this discussion to totally overshadow Girma in this move because it's awesome. But this isn't totally new. But the current state of play for the NWSL is that they are, from top to bottom, in terms of balance, they are the best league in the world. Like, they are the most talented league in the world. Barcelona winning every single game in La Liga Femenil is just a pure statement of, yes, Barcelona are great, but also the rest of the teams in Spain, for the most part, are not very good. Top to bottom, the NWSL has quality. The question is, how does the league position itself to avoid losing these kinds of players in the future? And that is, I think, as Aaron said on Blue Sky, that's like a totally open question.
Indeed. All right, that's enough transfer chat for this here episode. If you want to continue the conversation from now through to the Men's European Deadline Day, join us at patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. We got a Discord, lots of chat in there. It's a lot of fun, and it's the best way to support this here endeavour. Please and thank you. But for now, Taylor Rockwell, thank you very much indeed for your transfer expertise.
Thank you very much, my friend. I look forward to a slight bit of rest before we attempt to watch 4,000 Champions League games all at the same time.
Woo! Graham, multi-screen Rudman, thank you very much indeed for your contributions here.
Oh, I can't wait for tonight, Ryan Bailey. 4,000 matches all at once. The night I've been waiting for. Thank you, Ryan Bailey.
He was born for it, ladies and gents. And Joe Lowry, pleasure as always, my good man. Thank you very much, sir.
Pleasure was all mine, Ryan. And I'm actually so excited for today. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be awesome. We'll talk about it tomorrow. It's going to be great.
There we go. Team Chaos FC. We are looking forward to it. Join us on Thursday on the feed for our full Champions League review. But for now, bye!